So on the second piece of that equation, let's say the shift to cloud, and you mentioned it could be public clouds, it could be a private cloud behind a
Right.
firewall. Walk us through each of those options, and also companies who may consider like a hybrid option.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say, like, if you look at where we've been historically, right, for most corporations, most of their IT assets have been behind their firewall, and driven by economies of scale and just a variety of other trends out there today. I think people are increasingly looking at third-party providers, cloud providers, to basically provide, increasing parts of the IT stack. And so I think what corporations are increasingly looking for are the economics, the elasticity, the responsiveness, the time to market that these public providers may provide, but they also want overall control, manageability, security in particular. And so I think for many corporations today, it's not going to be one versus the other. It's going to be a little bit of a journey, and it's not a one size fits all, but it's really going to depend on the workload, on the data set, in terms of what they look for. So I think we sit in this room 10 years from now, what we're going to see is the largest corporations in the world, they will still have IT assets behind the corporate firewall, running on what one would call private clouds, but they will also have stuff on public clouds externally, and it's just going to depend on what fits where. And I think even in regulated industries, where some of the apprehension may be the highest, I think one is going to see them gradually move out out into the public cloud.
Got it. And so the last piece of that, which you sort of touched on a little bit, is how disruptive this is to the IT departments
That's right.
at some of these companies. So I'm just wondering, there's no way to predict this, but are the solutions that end up becoming the norm, or the standard, going to be sort of come up from the bottom up, where people are just there's power in devices and the individuals and how they want to work? Or do you think it's more likely to be top-down mandated because of these security
Sure.
controls?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to be a combination. So just share some examples. So I think if one takes some areas, like let's just say if one takes HR software and financials, take a company like Workday, right? So in those areas, typically the purchasing is more centrally driven, right? Because if I'm in an organization, I want to buy HR software, for my entire team, right, or for the entire company. So that's one example of it, centrally mandated. And you're certainly seeing companies like Workday or Salesforce, right, have tremendous growth today, right? And I think the market is moving towards those companies. Then take another area, where maybe it's more departmental driven, maybe like marketing automation, and take a company like Marketo, for example, right? So their marketing department may go out and purchase. And then let's take a third area where maybe it's more individual driven. Maybe an example might be, let's say Evernote, for example, where I, as an individual sitting inside a company, may go purchase an Evernote license. But then over time, I see that, I use it, I like it, and then over time, maybe I go buy a team license.
Let's talk about just the security aspect of it.
Right.
And I know that's a sweet spot for
Sure.
you, an area of focus.
Yeah.
So I just thought at a high level, again, if you could just share some thoughts around, what's happened up until this point in IT security that's been interesting to you, also looking out forward now in the next couple of years, and in particular how both corporations and entrepreneurs in the field are thinking about security now in the environment of all the news this year with like the NSA and all those political ramifications. How do they digest that kind of news?
Yeah, sure. So a few thoughts, right? So start off by saying, it's been a privilege for me personally to be in the IT security area. I've been in the IT security area going back to 1996 when I joined Checkpoint Software, when it was, a $10 million a year business. And so it's been a privilege, to kind of, go down this journey and watch the industry evolve. Also been privileged in the 10 years I've been at Greylock, have been personally involved with 3 IPOs in the security sector, SourceFire, and then Imperva, and then Palo Alto Networks, which actually got started in our office several years ago with my friend Nirzuk. So IT security overall, continues to be a high priority area of spending, for IT corporations. It's roughly, 35 billion a year product, business, annualized business, and the services side around that is, 1.5 to 2 times that size. So it's a significant size product market. I'd say there's 2 key trends maybe happening in that market today. The first is on the hacker side. you're seeing increased sophistication of hackers, as the money involved here, right? As more businesses become online, and then as hackers try and come and attack those businesses online, the dollar components are growing here in terms of the for-profit component, and you're seeing an increase in that type of activity. A lot of this is driven out of Eastern Europe, as a trend. So that's the first piece. The second piece is the corporate espionage side, right? And there's been a lot written about this recently, about China in particular. So I think just in terms of the sophistication of the hackers, the increase in this activity, and the potential impact of this on companies is kind of one key piece. The other side that's happening, along with this is just, I would say, the nature of the threats themselves, right? And basically, so the nature of the threats are actually growing in sophistication, and so this is whether it's distributed denial of service or advanced persistent threats, or malware, and malware getting into people's desktops or into the organizations, and then those becoming backdoors. These techniques are getting more sophisticated. So all of this kind of as a backdrop, right, is kind of creating an environment where for the average organization, right, I mean, this area continues to kind of be a top area of priority. Going back to mobile and cloud, right, so I think without mobile and cloud, this is kind of an area that's getting harder and harder for IT organizations. But as people come in with these mobile devices, and as the infrastructure goes to cloud, and in particular cloud outside the firewall, right, this is just taking the kind of the dimensions of all of this, right, to kind of the next level. And so I would say IT security has always been a challenging role, but it's probably been never more challenging than it is today. Now, switching to the entrepreneur side, right, so all of this is not lost on entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and other parts of the country and some other parts of the world. So I would say, there's just a resurgence of new companies in security. And, we're getting pinged by multiple companies every day in terms of new companies that are getting started that want to kind of come and attack in these different areas.